When I started working for NGOs, especially for international NGOs, the first one is the EU's newly launched Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. So I actually went to Europe for 3 months because Europe basically is the center of sustainability at the moment. I would actually encourage employers to give a chance to those who have very diverse profiles like me.
Welcome to our candidate spotlight series where we bring extraordinary professionals into the spotlight. These professionals are chosen for their expertise, industry contributions, and their proactive search for new roles. They are here to talk about their career journey, skills, and aspirations, providing our listeners who could be potential employees scouting for new talent, or it could be fellow professionals who are looking for insights into career development. I'm Savvy, founder of Stemgenic, a professional recruitment and career consulting firm based in Singapore. We specialize in STEM verticals. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So each episode will feature an inspiring individual, and today's guest is no exception. So before we dive in, let me set the stage by giving you a quick overview of our guest's professional journey and accomplishments, and based on her LinkedIn profile. So let's get rolling. So we are going to be meeting up with Liping, who is a seasoned professional in PR, communications, sustainability, consulting, and an NGO expert. Yes, so she is someone who has been wearing multiple hats in her career journey. So basically, she has got around 20 years of experience. So when I met with her, she was open for a full-time opportunity. At the same time, she was also waiting for an answer from her uni for her PhD application. And just over the last few days, she has got that particular approval to start her PhD, which changes her direction. But she's still open for opportunity. She is still open for freelancing. She could be a great asset in companies who are into sustainability, renewable energy or clean energy, CSR and environmental governance, NGOs and international development. Could also be a good fit within aviation, finance and investment, sustainable finance actually, and then technology and innovation areas as well. And then tier 3 could be areas into education and training, and also public policy and governance. Welcome to our candidate spotlight series. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. In fact, we are currently running all our pilot programs. This is a service that is going to get rolled in January. And right now we have shortlisted quite some interesting candidates. And the idea behind this is to provide a platform for senior candidates who are actually actively looking out for opportunities to have a chance to bring a lot more information onto the table in addition to their CV. So this particular link can be used for your job search. So we believe the viewers could be of two categories. One, obviously, employers who are looking for top tier talents. And second thing, candidates who are similar to your area of specialization, who are looking for their next step in their career. So basically, your entire experience can be really valuable to someone who is following the same path as what you have gone through, and which is also the reason why we are quite selective in whom we are bringing on board for this particular program, because we can't really help all candidates, but I'm more interested in candidates whose career journey has been slightly different from a traditional career pathway, right?
Thank you so much for including me into your program.
Let's just start off with a very simple, brief question, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and a professional background? Keep it brief as possible, right? Because we are going to get into details wherever it's necessary.
So my name is Liping, and I was born and raised in China. I received university education in anthropology in China. And then I got my master's degree in human rights in Paris. So I came to Singapore in 2015 for work, and that's actually the start of my journey. Now I'm a new citizen in Singapore already. So my career journey has been a little bit different than the majorities. I started my career with 10 years experience with non-governmental organizations in project management roles, donor relations, campaigners, as well as policy and advocacy work.
Right.
And then I transit to private sector, aiming to work on business and human rights, but then ended in corporate communications for 8 years, and then 1 year in sustainability, and then 1 year in sales, selling renewable and circular solutions to
Right,
corporate
right.
clients. So that's pretty much a brief introduction about myself so far.
Just a question out of curiosity, right? I mean, like, what made you to choose a career in this particular pathway, especially in a human rights or sustainability? Is this something that you wanted to get into, or it just happened naturally?
It's actually anthropology which chose me instead
Right.
of I chose anthropology
Yeah,
when I
yeah.
did my university degree. But I really enjoyed because it teach you how to observe or understand a different culture without judgment.
Right.
And that actually built me in a different person than I was before.
Right, right.
And then when I started moving along for my career path, I started with NGOs, which I was passionate about.
Right, right.
But there's that much I can do with NGOs. So after my study in Paris, I decided that maybe I should try something new, which is business and human rights. So
Right.
that's why I actually shifted to the private sector.
So if you look at your career journey, right, so far, what would be your key milestones that you're quite proud of?
I would say there's many.
Mm-hmm.
Like
If you were to pick the best three or the best four?
yeah, when I started working for NGOs, especially for international NGOs, I started being part of the policy influence at the global level.
Right.
And I had opportunities, for example, to speaking at the board of directors of Global Fund
Right.
against AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis,
Right.
and then try to advocate or lobby the board to approve meaningful youth participations in their national governance. And I did it together with 7 governments in the EU. So that's
Right.
kind of also another kind of important milestone for me to realize that being a young people without much resources, we can actually create an impact.
Right,
It
right.
really doesn't matter of your positions, your age, or who you are. It actually matters like what you do. And then the third milestones I would see that is my transition to the private sector.
Right.
Because people in NGOs, they see people in private sector as a different animal and the vice versa.
Right, right.
So I would say that I decided to try and see how business works because
Right.
I had no idea how
So that
business
was a
works.
conscious decision of trying on the private sector, correct?
Yes, it's a
Okay.
conscious decision.
Right.
Even though the path was really not the same as I aimed to originally,
Right.
but it was an interesting journey, knowing the corporates and then knowing how business works
Right.
and what is the role in society. Because to achieve sustainable development, for example, we do need everyone's effort.
Yeah. And just out of curiosity on that particular part in moving to the private sector, right? Did you have a visibility on what the private sector life is going to be like? Did you have any mentor or anyone working on the other side to help you out? Or was it a complete dive without even having an idea what that is?
Actually, no, I did have a mentor.
Ah, right.
While I was doing my master degree in Sciences Po Paris,
Yeah.
I participated into a student challenge,
Right.
and it was to help NGOs to address their challenges.
Right, right.
And each student group has a mentor from private sector. So the mentor I got in my student groups, he actually worked for a French company at the time in railway business.
Right,
And
right.
actually with his help, I found an internship in that company
Right,
as
right.
part of my master study afterwards. So
Right.
that's kind of the start of my journey with the private sector.
Because that makes sense because sometimes it's always a very brave move when you're switching between one industry to another. And it actually helps when you really have someone on the other side who's shown you what exactly it's like, right?
Yes.
But otherwise, it might be quite difficult because sometimes the grass may not be greener on the other side, right?
No.
You don't want to go down that road. Yeah, so you have got a very diverse experience here: NGOs, consulting, corporate roles, and all these three are quite careers that can be defined within each space itself. For example, a career in NGO can also be drawn with a framework. A career in consulting can also be drawn with a framework. And there are pathways internally for each division, isn't it? So this diverse experience that you have gotten now, is it really adding any value, or is it actually limiting your job search now? So basically, if you've got NGO, now you can go into NGO, you can go into consulting, you can also go into, any kind of, corporate roles, which means that there's a lot of doors are open.
Yes.
Right? But what's your experience in the response that you're getting? How are people actually perceiving this experience?
I would say that the majority of the society are still not ready for such a profile. Yeah. When I was searching the opportunities in the past 9 months, I actually did exactly what you said. I tried NGOs, I tried UN agencies, I tried private sectors. And I got a lot of rejections.
Right.
And apparently, in this bigger environment, while a lot of talents made available to the market, employers has much space or positions to actually choose what kind of profile they are looking for.
Right.
And sometimes I was actually amazed at how strict they put into their talent search
Right.
to meet exactly what they're looking for, all of the categories they're looking for.
Right. Right.
So yes, so it hasn't been actually easy, even though I thought it is my assets.
Right.
But in reality, it was not straightforward and black and white. And also my experience, for example, it's diverse, but then only in corporate communications, I have extensive length of years in a way that to give the employers to meet those category, the box employers trying to put it out.
Right.
But a lot of times, other experiences, for example, my sales positions is only in 10 months. It was just too short to convince employers that I can do the work. But in reality, I believe I can, and I have a lot of strength.
I was actually going to ask a specific question on your sales experience, because it's not every day that you find a PR communication, NGO background person stepping into a sales role. But I also know about that particular job quite well, and it's not a traditional, typical, KPI related sales. That's a very value added sort of, sales. You want to talk about that, and what was your motivation in getting into that?
When I came to the private sector 10 years ago, my goal was to understand how business works. And being in corporate communications gave me a lot of space to learn, because I talked to everyone and anyone in the organization from different teams and to understand what they do, why it matters, and then what is the common grounds for different teams to work together. But at the same time, at the end of the day, corporate communications is a support function. It's not the core of the business. So actually moving into the sales role was very exciting for me, because I feel that I was one step closer to the business.
Right.
And on top of that, I was also very excited in terms of what I was selling, because it's a sustainability solution to the corporate clients. It's not just a product which another company need to do their operations, but it's more like a vision we're selling in terms of how to decarbonize aviation industry together. Not only with the industries in aviation, but also with players outside of the aviation. Because at the end of the day, everything is connected. We need to have a holistic approach to address climate change. So that's kind of really excited me to take that role.
So basically, you've taken NGO, consulting, and even within corporate, that's PR communication, and then also sales as well. If given a choice between these options, right, where is your ultimate or your ideal job where you're going to be like, I'm really interested in that job every day? You're going to have that interest in, that's the most important thing, right? I mean, getting a job just to pay off the bills is one thing. And finding a job that really excites you to get up every day and be there to face that particular responsibility. Where is your preference?
My preference is that it's not really the type of organizations, either NGO or international organizations or private sectors, it doesn't matter. What matters the most is that the job I will get can really create a real impact to our planet or to the community we are living in. So that's kind of what I aimed for, because this is what I was passionate about and I was inspired with when I was kids, and I really want to follow that path to do something which can create positive impact.
One thing I've noticed is ever since you left your last role, you have kind of like taken on this journey of, self-discovery, or, it's more like on the roads, trying to get a different sort of exposure. And you also, combine that with a little bit more of your career exploration as well, right? So could you help us understand, maybe give us a story of how that was, after leaving your last organization?
Leaving an organization because of layoffs,
Yeah.
it's tough, because you realize that suddenly you are in the middle of nowhere and then you don't know where you are heading to. You thought you had a direction, but then suddenly it's not. And that is actually difficult. So in order to figure it out where I want to head to and to have my own decision, own directions for my own life, I thought it's good to have an adventure. So I actually went to Europe for 3 months, because Europe basically is the center of sustainability at the moment in terms of in the international, when you look at the global situations now. So I went to Europe with the aim to look around and see what is happening there, what are the opportunities and industries, as well as what are the potential opportunities for me as well, like where I can actually land it too.
Right.
So on top of going into the trade shows, talking to people in the private sector, I also reconnected with a lot of friends in
Right.
different industries to see what is happening out there.
Right.
So one of the friends actually I reconnected with proposed me that PhD idea,
Right.
which I found it very interesting and inspiring as well.
Right.
So that's kind of why I started exploring that idea, and now finally I got my letter of acceptance just before Christmas. But that is kind of a different path. It's peace and conflict studies, especially with the current situation. You can tell there's increased tension, geopolitical tensions at the national, regional, and international level. So going into that research can be meaningful, but it doesn't actually counter the experience I have had so far working on health related topics, working on climate change, and working on renewable energies. So all of those experiences still relevant, I would say.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And I want to, on top of my PhD study, I want to also find a part-time or freelancing opportunities which I can still contribute in the experience I've already had.
I think, well, that's the idea behind this particular program as well, right? Helping you to bring your experience into the spotlight. And whoever is watching, Liping is open for providing her experience in the form of consulting or even freelance part-time opportunities. I'm not supposed to be putting Liping's details out there in the open, but I will be putting down Liping's LinkedIn profile as part of this video. So whoever is interested, they can get in touch with her directly. And if you were to go back in time and advise your younger self, right? What would you actually say to that Liping? Anything that you could have done better, or anything that you could have avoided?
I probably shouldn't stay in corporate comms for so long.
All right, then, fair enough.
If it is not, since it is not really in line with my personal passion and my personal purpose, but somehow I just stayed it for 8 years. I learned a lot of things in those 8 years, and I never regret it per se.
Right.
And I think what I get, and it provided me a lot of opportunities to gain new skills and new relationship and connections. But it's just very different from what I wanted originally.
This might be just more of an industry insight related question. So I do speak with a lot of people within this particular field, but again, I'm not the expert. But it's whenever I talk to candidates in this field, that's when I also learn something new, right? So when it comes to sustainability, it's quite a trending word, I got to say, nowadays, right? But what are the recent trends and developments in this particular field that is quite exciting and that you think is very promising, that could yield some really good results moving forward?
Yeah. I would highlight two things. The first one is the EU's newly launched Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive.
Right.
It's actually the first regional directive which is mandatory.
Right.
So basically, it required the companies to report their sustainability mandatory, and it covers all of the scopes: scope 1 emissions, scope 2 emissions, and scope 3 emissions.
Right.
Even though it is a EU policy, but because it required companies to report their emissions across the entire value chain, it actually will impact to many companies outside of EU as well.
Right.
So that is something interesting to look at and see how the concrete impact it will create in the sustainability space.
Right.
Another thing I feel excited about is the increased focus in biodiversity.
Right.
We do have a UN treaty for biodiversity. I think it's the UN Convention on Biological Diversity. And then also in 2022, there was a Kunming and Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework
Right.
adopted. And those kind of increased attention to the biodiversity will give us a great opportunities to protect and restore our environment and planet,
Right.
not
Right.
only land, but also marine, like oceans, coastlines, as well as inland waters. Those are actually very critical if we would like to achieve sustainable development.
Right.
So those two I would like to highlight.
Was there anything that has failed quite miserably for 2024?
I wouldn't see the failure specifically for 2024, but just in general, I would see that the actions we have taken are not fast enough.
Right.
Yeah, everybody says that climate change is a crisis. We have to take actions, but you really, when you look around and see who have been taking those proactive actions, the numbers are actually not as promising as the buzzwords spreading around.
Right.
So I would say that we need more actions.
And if we look at the Southeast Asia region, I know Singapore is doing their part, but what other countries are taking this quite seriously and looking into making an impactful change?
Climate change is a issue, is a challenge. And also, sustainability is important. Everyone recognizes it. But to tackle those problems, we need resources. And for Southeast Asia countries, Singapore is a more developed country, has with resources that we can actually address those problems. But many other Southeast Asia countries, they may not have the resources they required to
Right.
tackle those problems. And also, when we look at the climate change, a lot of times the developing countries actually bear more consequences than developed countries.
Right,
Because a lot of emissions, actually the majority of the emissions we create globally are coming from developed countries.
Yeah.
But the developing countries need to take the consequences as a result of it with much less resources.
Right. Right.
So that inequality also brings challenges to the table. So I would say that it requires everyone to work together and find a solution. So in that sense, the national boundary might be a challenge.
Right.
We actually need a global framework and
Everyone needs to join hands.
Yes.
What advice would you give to organizations who want to put sustainability into their operations?
I would say that the companies or organizations, they should look at what are the sustainability challenges which matters to them the most. And once they identify that challenges,
Right.
then they identify the solutions to address it,
Right. Right.
either for them or for their clients for profitability purposes. But in reality, a lot of companies do the opposite way around. They want to make the money first, and then they look at how to take advantage of sustainability and then make profit out of it. And that actually a lot of times doesn't work because they don't understand how everything works, and then they don't understand really what matters the most.
Right.
It's very difficult.
For someone looking to start their career or maybe move their career into sustainability, what skill sets or what qualities do you think that they should start focusing on or developing from their side?
Actually, now when you look at the sustainability wise, you will realize that a lot of companies, they started to integrate sustainabilities across their entire operations. So even though for many people who don't have a title with sustainability in it, they actually need to
Be part of
perform,
it.
be part of it, and then make sure and reflect how their daily jobs can contribute to the sustainable development on long run. So in that sense, I would say that skills and a lot of times skills and competencies come from the daily job. Like
Right.
you learn by doing it.
Right.
So maybe I would say that talents or individuals or professionals, if they want to come into the sustainability space, maybe they can actually start looking at how they can change their current work to be more sustainable
Right.
before they can looking into beyond and see what else they can actually pursue and perform.
Right. So basically taking the initiative internally first and then, stepping or building something from there onwards, right? Interesting. Could you share some practical steps individuals can take from their side?
Identifying some small actions they can take and start it from there.
Right.
Because a lot of times when you look at the sustainability and look at the sustainable development, it's true that countries can meet together, have the UN frameworks, conventions, but eventually at the end of the day, to really make the changes, it starts with small. If we can actually mobilize many individuals to do the same small things together, it will actually make a big impact.
Right.
So in that sense, I would say that identifying the small actions first, start working on it, and then build that momentum to increase your impact and
Right.
skill. I would like to give a personal example. For example, my personal life, I started by looking at how I can change my personal habits to be more sustainable.
Right.
So from at least 5 years ago, I started to reduce plastic usage, especially the single plastic bags. And then once I built that momentum, then I started to join friends to clean up the plastic waste on the beach. Yeah. Once I accumulated that experiences and understand why it is important, then COVID came.
Yeah.
And nobody can gather. So I started to picking up trashes in my neighborhood by myself.
Right.
And then post it on social media to influence others to join me to do the same.
Right.
And then after COVID, we can gather again. And then in 2022, I was the organizer of the 9 beach cleaning ups in 2 months' time among colleagues and friends.
Right.
So I think I would say that really kind of you need to start small and then build that momentum and then get more and more.
Right.
And at work, it's the same. Look at your functions and see what you can do differently to contribute to the sustainability from your daily operations. And from there, you can influence more and then achieve more. If, for example, if you are in the procurement team, like you look at how you can change your procurement exercises to be more sustainable and start small and then to accumulate the results. And then with the result, you can convince the leaders to give you resources to expand that initiative. And once you have a best case studies or best practices within your company, then you can show the best practices to an industry saying that this is what we do and you can actually learn from us.
Interesting.
So that's kind of how everything started. It's never too late to start small.
Yeah.
Each of us need to start from somewhere.
I mean, one of the examples that I could think of is during COVID, we made human beings wear masks. And this was done at a huge, mass scale people actually wore it. So basically you plan something and you have implemented it and people are following it. And this happened across the whole world, isn't it? So what it required was a small deadly virus, and it's deadly. Because of that, people got scared and they started, following, right? So if we are capable of creating something and, doing something at such a mass scale, sustainability and, climate change should also have something at that level where everyone is doing it, and it should be a must for them to do it to have that impact. But if it's an option, I think the progress is going to be a lot more slower, isn't it? As long as it's an option.
That's why I was talking about the EU CSRD, because it's mandatory directive which companies need to follow. Another thing I want to kind of show that individuals' actions matters is when Singapore just started, Singapore didn't have a lot of resources to do the, for example, sustainability, to pay attention to the sustainability. But the founding father Lee Kuan Yew, he was very determined to have agreed to build Singapore to be a garden city.
Yeah.
So he actually mobilized the households to plant greeneries around their house.
Right.
And that actually built a very strong foundation for Singapore to become a garden city later on.
Right.
Because when government didn't have the resources, they mobilized the household to do their part.
Right.
And once Singapore has more and more resources, then the government started investing in fundings. But they didn't wait. They actually started somewhere, and then they kind of expanded their efforts.
Baby steps,
baby step with more resources. So this is kind of the path I would encourage every individuals, every household, every country, every company to actually look into it. Because if we wait until the resources in place, it will be too late.
Yeah, that was interesting. Some learning lessons for me as well, right?
Thank you.
So overall, I think we pretty much, covered some interesting areas. Is there anything else that you would like to highlight about your profile, Liping? Especially, if there's an employer out there, whether it's for a freelance, opportunity or for a part-time opportunity, you're available to provide such services. Is there anything that you would like to say to such an employer who is maybe on the lookout for someone like yourself?
I would actually encourage employers to give a chance to those who have very diverse profiles like me. Because, for example, when I look at the strength I have, I would see the agility as well as the holistic approach. That's kind of my strength.
Right.
Because I come from so diverse background, I actually focus on identifying what are the challenges and then find solutions to fix that challenge. Being creative, using different technologies or using different techniques to actually tackle it. And that actually doesn't limit to any relevant or proven experiences. It doesn't matter. What matters is like the person need to be practical and creative to address problems, problem solving skills.
Right.
So that's kind of very important the companies should look into instead of how many years of previous experiences the person have had.
Right.
That's kind of the one thing. Another thing is that holistic approach. Our world is much more connected today than before.
Yeah.
And when companies look for talents, they should actually look for those talents who have holistic approach instead of only have a silo or focus.
Narrow mindset.
Yeah, narrow mindset just for the function or team itself.
Right.
Because we are living in a much more complex world, and we do need collaborations and we do need innovations and creativity to address much more complex problems.
Right.
Then people from a diverse experience and background actually helps. So it means that skills are transferable.
think that's a very interesting point because I've been in the game for like 12 years now when it comes to recruitment, right? So there's a considerable difference when we scout for talents when the client clearly tells us, okay, this is what we are looking for, and there's a checklist, right? So that's one. There's another approach where there is a certain way of working by, helping the employee to see a certain potential of a candidate and then trying to carve out something that is more specific to the candidate's capability. So there are two different elements here, right? Unfortunately, this particular element, very few employers fall under that particular category, right? Most of the searches are always very specific. The checklist needs to be there, correct?
Yeah.
Things such as out of the box thinking and, coming up with solutions to problems. You can always sugarcoat these things on your CV, but this is what a lot of candidates are also going to be doing. So how are you going to differentiate, yourself from those candidates, right? Which is why I actually thought of this particular program. The video may be the best way to get such outputs out. An employer can look at the CV and such a video. I think that's a great combination. At least he or she would already have an idea who exactly they are going to be meeting up with, right?
Yes.
So it's an initiative. It's your suggestion as well. So let's see how it works out.
It's true. And thank you so much. I'm excited to be part of this initiative and see how it goes.
I'm very curious to see where, things will materialize after this. Obviously, the PhD, and then surely there's going to be a career, continuation on your profile, right? So I'm very curious and, keeping fingers crossed to see how it actually have an impact. Thanks for being part of the show. And
Thank you.
touch wood, hopefully, something comes knocking your door soon. Okay?
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, that brings the episode to an end. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more similar episodes. Happy holidays, guys, and Happy New Year. Signing off, Savvy.